From record high unemployment levels to worryingly low educational outcomes, the crisis facing young people in this country is once again being described as a ticking time bomb. On this day in 1976, thousands of pupils took to the streets of Soweto in protest against the apartheid government. My co-anchor, Ayanda Nyathi, joins us live from Morris Isaacson School in Soweto, central venue there, so to speak, of where things began on this day in 1976. We'll also speak to Malungelo Booi. He is in the Eastern Cape in Mthatha. That's where President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address a National Youth Day event. Ayanda, let's kick it off with you. Chilly morning there in Soweto, but really thinking back to 1976, some powerful sentiments coming from the people you've spoken to this morning.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing about the cold weather. You know, it creates a kind of intimacy that I really think opens the way for honest, perhaps sober reflections about the route we've traveled over the past 46 years and how far we still need to go in order to really realize in its complexity and its fullness the ideals that were encompassed by the 20,000 odd young people who marched through the streets of Soweto on this day in history 46 years ago. And the sun is finally up. That doesn't mean the temperature has improved at all. Still -1 degrees, but the activity has picked up, of course, as well as more and more people wake up to a reality faced by many young people in this country, described, as you've put it in some instances, as a ticking time bomb. We're at the Morris Isaacson School, as you've mentioned, opened in the 1950s, crucial in placing really where the uprising here in Soweto actually began. So let's get you more reflections on the people who are leading this institution and the kind of thoughts that they're grappling with as we try to place together where young people in this country are headed. And for that, let's bring in Ubaba Siketo Sabangwane, who is not only the deputy principal here at Morris Isaacson School, but is also a history teacher. Very timely to be able to speak to you. Thank you so much on this chilly Thursday morning for making time for Newzroom Afrika. Good morning to you, sir. Perhaps let me just get broadly your reflections on where we are, especially as a leader in an institution like this that's produced so many leaders, and an institution that I imagine is hoping to produce leaders of the future as well.
Good morning, sir. My name is, let me say, I'm Mr. Sabangwane SB. They used to call me Mr. Sabangwane SB. Yeah. When I move around, say, Mr. SB, Mr. SB. But thank you for the opportunity. I am the deputy principal of the school. I am also teaching history in the school. I like this subject, history, because history, you know what, it gives you the past, present, and the future. Yeah. Because without history, you cannot determine the future. So let me share with you a bit on what happened in the 1976 uprising. And in the 1976 uprising, the march started here at Morris Isaacson. Students from Naledi came to Morris Isaacson. And then because here at Morris, there was a student leader by the name of State Machine, you can see even the statue there. State Machine was the president of the student. He was the one who was leading the students, and then to march from Morris Isaacson to Orlando Stadium. The main aim to go to Orlando Stadium was to be able to draft the petition in order to be submitted to the Minister of Education. Unfortunately, because it was not only Naledi and Morris, even other schools like Ibongo and then Orlando West, etc., they were like moving to Orlando Stadium. But unfortunately, they did not reach Orlando Stadium because the police stopped them at Orlando West. That's where police shot, firing shots on them and then killing Hector Peterson. Unfortunately, Hector Peterson, it was just a coincidence because he was not part of the march. Yeah. It was just after school, and then he was from the shop, and then coincidentally, he was shot.
Sure. You know, as a history teacher, you'll appreciate that saying that, you know, each generation has to kind of find their own struggle, commit to it, or abandon it. And I'm paraphrasing, I think it's a quote by Frantz Fanon. You'll correct me if I'm wrong there. But, you know, with that in mind, what do you reckon is the struggle of today's young people? I mean, in 1976, it was clear. Yeah. They were done with substandard education. They were pushing back against the apartheid government. They wanted equality insofar as the prospects of the future are concerned. Yes. Has that much changed, do you think?
You know what? Change is pain. That one, it's a fact. Because when I'm teaching history most of the time, I used to ask my learners, comparing the class of 1976 and the class of today. There is a change, a big difference, because now Africans is no more in the townships. I can say they've won the battle, the students of 1976. But now, with regard to the learners that we are teaching today, yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried a bit. Because, you know, there are a lot of opportunities on their side, but they cannot see it the way we are seeing it ourselves. Because the most or biggest challenge with these learners is drugs.
Sure.
Yeah, they are like, you know what, drug is the priority. So as teachers, we are not only teachers, we are parents, we are policemen, we are social workers. I can name them.
Yeah.
So, you know what, the learners today,
sure. All right.
They talk about the rights, we have got rights. Forgetting that rights must be accompanied by the responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And, you know, we'll sport for choice about which of these many other issues that we can unpack, and we'll keep doing that throughout the course of the day. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Okay.
Mr. Sigeto Tabangwane, who is the Deputy Principal here at Morris Isaacson School, as well as a history teacher, incidentally, as we mark this day in history as well. I'm hoping to be able to get you a sense of what some of the youth activists in Soweto also have to say, because, you know, what also happens around this time, with your indulgence, Michelle, is we take stock of whether or not the kind of change that was driven by young people can be realized once again by the young people of today. And for that, let me bring in Mbali Zulu, who is a youth activist here in Soweto, just for a snapshot of some of his thoughts as we mark this day in history. It's great to speak to you. Thank you for making time as well. Incidentally, yesterday, you're involved in what's called the Sober Conversations, as it were. Tell us a bit more about that, and how much you think came out of those reflections as we mark this day.
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the listeners or watchers of Newzroom Afrika. You know, we are inspired by the youth of June 16, 1976. And, you know, last night we decided, as the youth of today, as entrepreneurs, as young people who are active in our communities, you know, to come together and find solutions to our problems. We're inspired by the generation of 1976 because when they were faced with a challenge head on, they decided to come together. I mean, in a time where, you know, apartheid was probably at its peak, you know, they didn't shy away from that. They got together, and as a result, they liberated our country, right? So we thought, you know, it's so powerful when young people come together in a room and find solutions for their problems. And we decided to have sober discussions, and the title Sober Discussions comes after, you know, for a very long time, after a while, we have been, there was a trend where we're saying in June 16, it was just known as another holiday where young people just drink and you know, just celebrate recklessly without, you know, really understanding what the day is about, without the reflection, without that commemoration. So for us, it's bringing that back and say, can we find solutions to our problems? We have problems on unemployment.
And that's just one of the problems,
yes.
right? Mr. Tabangwane, who I spoke to, mentioned drug abuse within some schools as well. And we could go on for quite some time, but quickly, where do you reckon the disconnect is at as a young person in Soweto who's got an interest in keeping this commemoration alive and, you know, speaking to its true value?
So I think the disconnect comes also with our education. When we don't really know who we are as young people, when we don't understand where we come from, it becomes a problem to find solutions for the future, right? Because there's many, you know, what we learned in this journey, right? To say during apartheid, I mean, the history teacher that was here will tell you that there was two kinds of curriculums, right? As much as there was Bantu education, which was the main education system, there was also what we call education of liberation. Now, with the education of liberation, that was the education that really liberated those young students. So the young students of 76, when you look at them, when you see the fire in their bellies, when you see what they wanted to achieve, when you see what they were, you know, that spirit that brought them together, you know, is driven by the education of liberation.
Right.
So we still need that education of liberation in this country.
And I guess the question becomes, what does that look like? Mbali, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.
Yeah.
I know it was quite a brief discussion, but there's an opportunity hopefully to be able to continue ventilating these issues as we mark 46 years since those 1976 youth uprising.
Certainly. Incredible conversations once again, Ayanda, that we're having on a very chilly Youth Day, and one just wonders what government is doing to try and harness this kind of energy in the young people in our country. Malungelo, let's continue the conversation with you this morning. Over the past 2 years, the President delivering his Youth Day speech virtually, of course, due to COVID-19 and lockdown regulations. Today, he'll be there in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape, in person, and with a cloud hanging over his head.
That's right, Michelle. In fact, the President will be addressing South Africans from this venue that's behind me. This is the local stadium here in Mthatha, where the President and some of his ministers will gather here addressing the hundreds of young people that will be coming from various communities in the former Transkei region to come and listen to the President. And of course, Michelle, the President will be addressing these young people, many of them desperate to hear a message of hope. And of course, the Eastern Cape is one of the provinces, Michelle, where the expanded unemployment, you and I know, stands at around 52%, the highest in the country. It's followed by provinces like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KwaZulu-Natal. The question is, Michelle, what is it that the President will be telling these young people and South Africans who are desperate to hear what is it that government will do to create employment opportunities for them, to deal with the problem of drugs, crime? And also, Michelle, we're expecting the President to also talk about the issue of corruption. If you remember, in many of his previous address regarding Youth Day, he would speak about, you know, crime, he would speak about corruption and what his government intends to do about that. But before, Michelle, the President addressed the South Africans from here at around 11 o'clock, he will be interacting with some young people at a school called St. John's College. It's going to be interesting then to hear what questions will the young people be posing to the President at that engagement, which starts at around 10 o'clock.
Malungelo, talk to us about the particular issues that face young people in the Eastern Cape. We know that the Health Department yesterday, in fact, we were just in conversation with the Deputy Health Minister this morning, launching those particular healthcare facilities that are aimed towards the needs of young people in that province and in other healthcare facilities around the country. So healthcare is certainly one of them. Yes. What are the other issues?
That's right, Michelle. I mean, if you drive around Mthatha, for example, Michelle, you can just see the sheer desperation amongst young people here who are desperate for opportunities. Some of them, in fact, tend to drugs. People, Michelle, needing, you know, to be given hope, really, essentially. And if we're talking about the former Transkei region in particular, Michelle, this is one of the areas where people will tell you that they feel forgotten, where they will tell you that services are nowhere to be found in many communities. People still have to walk for several kilometers just to access some of the most basic things like water, healthcare facilities, where in some communities, Michelle, still people have to rely on rivers. There's no sanitations in some communities. So those are just some of the many challenges challenges that people, and especially young people, face here in the Eastern Cape. And of course, these problems are not only unique in the Eastern Cape, they're also problems that you'll find in other rural provinces of this country. The question, though, is what is it that the President will tell to people in this particular province and also in other parts of the country when he delivers that message at around 11 o'clock this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just paying lip service to what it means on this Youth Day 2022. Let me thank our colleagues. Ayanda Nyathi is live to us there in Soweto. Malungelo Booi live to us in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape ahead of the President's official Youth Day address. To both of you, thanks very much indeed.